Everyone in the village called it a terrible day, but the young man looked at the empty stable and whispered, "Perhaps." Years later, that same man would stand inside the king's castle, wearing royal robes, while thousands of people waited to hear his words. How could a man who had lost everything become the man who helped others change their lives? Before we begin, comment, what's one thing in your life you need to see differently? Long ago, in a small village beside the kingdom of Hebron, there lived a young man named Akiva. Akiva was not rich, he was not powerful. He owned a tiny wooden shop where he repaired farming tools. His father had taught him the trade. Every morning, Akiva opened the shop before sunrise. He sharpened blades, fixed broken wheels, and repaired wooden handles. Akiva worked hard, but he often complained. "If only I had more money. If only the king noticed me. If only my father had left me something better. If only life were easier." One morning, an old traveler entered his shop. His name was Azriel, a man who had spent many years traveling between kingdoms. Azriel brought a broken farming blade. Akiva examined it. "This cannot be repaired," he said. Azriel smiled. "Everything can be repaired. Not this." "You are looking at what it is," Azriel replied. "You should be looking at what it can become." Akiva laughed. "It is a broken blade." Azriel looked into his eyes. "And you are looking at yourself the same way." That sentence stayed with Akiva, but he did not understand it yet. A few weeks later, Akiva made a serious mistake. A wealthy farmer paid him to repair a valuable plow. Akiva rushed the work. The plow broke during the farmer's first day in the field. The farmer returned furious. "You are careless." Akiva felt ashamed. That evening he sat outside his shop. "I have failed," he whispered. Azriel happened to pass by. He saw the young man sitting alone. "What happened?" Akiva lowered his head. "I have ruined everything." Azriel sat beside him. "Did you ruin everything?" "My reputation," Akiva said. "No," Azriel replied. "My business?" "No." "My future?" "No." Azriel looked at him calmly. "No, Akiva, you ruined one plow." Akiva became silent. Azriel continued, "A failure is an event. You turn it into a prison when you make it your identity." The next morning, Akiva visited the farmer. "I made a mistake," he said. "Let me fix it without payment." The farmer agreed. Akiva spent 3 days rebuilding the plow. This time, he studied every piece carefully. The farmer was impressed. "You learned quickly." Akiva smiled. That day, he discovered his first transformation. Failure is not always a wall. Sometimes it is a teacher wearing an ugly face. Months passed. Akiva began earning more money, but something strange happened. The more he earned, the more worried he became. He feared losing it. He counted his coins every night. One winter evening, a poor widow named Tirza came into his shop. Her son needed a tool for work. She had no money. Akiva almost refused. Then he remembered Azriel. He repaired the tool and handed it to her. "Pay me when you can." Tirza smiled through tears. "May your hands never lack work." The next morning, 3 farmers came to Akiva's shop. They had heard what he had done. One brought him a broken cart. Another brought a damaged plow. The third asked him to repair a mill wheel. Akiva suddenly understood. His money had not grown because he had chased money. It grew because he had created value. From that day forward, Akiva changed his question. Instead of asking, "How much can I get?" he asked, How much can I give? And strangely, the more value he created, the more opportunities came. Sometimes abundance begins when your mind stops asking, "What can I take?" and starts asking, "What can I contribute?" 1 year later, the king announced a great competition. The kingdom needed someone to design a stronger farming machine. The winner would receive a position in the royal workshop. Akiva wanted to enter, but fear whispered, "You are only a village repairman. You are not educated. You will embarrass yourself." For 3 nights he worked on his design. On the 4th night, he almost destroyed it. Then he remembered Azriel's words, "You are looking at what it is. Look at what it can become." So Akiva stopped asking, "Am I good enough?" He asked, "What could I learn if I tried?" He entered the competition. He did not win. He came 3rd. But the king's chief engineer noticed his design. "You think differently," the engineer said. Akiva smiled. He had learned something more valuable than first place. Confidence does not always come before action. Often, confidence is born because you acted while you were afraid. Success slowly changed Akiva's life, but it also created a problem. He became busy. He worked from sunrise until night. His younger sister, Yael, often waited for him outside the shop. One evening she asked, "Will you walk with me?" "I have work," Akiva replied. "You always have work," Yael said softly. Akiva became angry. "I am building our future." Yael looked down. "I thought I was part of your future." Her words struck him harder than any insult. That night, Akiva realized something painful. He had improved his work while neglecting the people he loved. The next morning, he closed his shop early. He walked with Yael to the river. They talked for hours. He learned about her dreams. He learned about her fears. He learned how much he had missed. From then on, Akiva protected time for people, not only for work. He discovered, a successful life is not a life filled with achievements. It is a life filled with things worth achieving. Then came the hardest day of Akiva's life. His father became sick. For many weeks, Akiva cared for him. But one cold morning, his father died. Akiva was broken. He returned to the workshop and sat in his father's old chair. "I would give anything to have one more day," he cried. For the first time, even Azriel had no easy answer. He simply sat beside him. After a long silence, Azriel said, "Do not ask only, 'Why did I lose him?'" Akiva looked up. Azriel continued, "Ask, 'What did he leave inside me?'" Akiva remembered his father's hands, the patience, the honesty, the craft, the kindness. He realized his father had not only left him a shop, he had left him values. So Akiva made a promise. "I will live in a way that keeps your best lessons alive." His grief did not disappear, but it gained meaning. And sometimes that is the beginning of healing. You cannot always change your loss, but you can decide whether the loss becomes the end of your story or part of its purpose. Years passed. Akiva became known throughout the kingdom. One day, the king asked him to lead a difficult project. The royal engineers had failed. Akiva was afraid. What if I fail? He almost refused. Then he remembered his first broken plow. He remembered the competition. He remembered his father. He remembered every time life had forced him to grow. So he accepted. The project was difficult. For months, nothing worked. But Akiva stopped seeing problems as proof that he should quit. He began seeing them as questions. Instead of, "This is impossible," he asked, "What have we not tried yet?" Instead of, "We failed again," he asked, "What did this failure teach us?" Eventually, the machine worked. The king was amazed. "You never gave up." Akiva shook his head. "I wanted to many times." The king asked, "Then what stopped you?" Akiva smiled. "I learned to see obstacles as instructions." The king eventually made Akiva head of the royal workshop. At first, Akiva believed leadership meant giving orders. He became demanding. Workers became nervous around him. One afternoon, an apprentice named Matthias made a terrible mistake. Akiva was about to shout. Then he stopped. He remembered the young man he once was, the young man who had ruined a farmer's plow, the young man who had been afraid. So Akiva said, "Show me what happened." Matthias explained. Akiva helped him fix it. The next day, Matthias arrived early. He worked harder than anyone. Akiva finally understood. People rarely become better because you make them feel small. They become better when you help them believe they can become better. From then on, Akiva stopped trying to control people. He started trying to develop them, and the workshop became stronger than ever. Years later, Akiva walked through the same village where he had grown up. He saw the little shop where he had once repaired tools. He saw the river where he had walked with Yael. He saw the road where Azriel had first challenged his thinking. Everything looked smaller now, but Akiva smiled. A young man approached him. "Are you the man who works for the king?" Akiva nodded. "Were you always successful?" Akiva laughed. "No." "Were you always confident?" Akiva replied. "No." "Were you always happy?" "No." The man looked confused. "Then how did you become successful?" Akiva looked toward the sunset. "I learned to ask a different question." "What question?" Akiva knelt beside him. "When something happens, I ask, what can this teach me?" The young man thought for a moment. "What if something bad happens?" Ask what it can teach you. "What if you fail?" Ask what it can teach you. "What if someone hurts you?" Ask what it can teach you. "What if you lose something?" Ask what it can teach you. The boy smiled. "And what if something good happens?" Akiva smiled back. Ask how you can use it to help someone else. That night, Akiva returned to the castle. He stood at the highest window and looked over the kingdom. He finally understood what Azriel had tried to teach him all those years ago. A positive mindset did not mean pretending everything was good. It did not mean ignoring pain. It did not mean smiling when life was falling apart. It meant refusing to let one moment decide the meaning of your entire life. The broken plow taught him. The empty shop taught him. The loss of money taught him. The fear taught him. His father's death taught him. His mistakes taught him. Even his greatest victories taught him. Everything became part of the journey. And that is the power of perspective. You may not control the storm, but you can decide whether the storm makes you weaker or teaches you how to build stronger walls. You may not control your past, but you can decide what your past will produce in your future.